Glue Wednesday. You see, it's my belief that we don't have to get over. We need to find ways to keep it together. And my glue is G-L-U-E. God's love undoes everything. Because that's what keeps it together. That life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of each puzzle in your family, social, or business relationships. Yet, no matter what size puzzle piece you think you are, without you, the puzzle is labeled as incomplete. Hello, and welcome to Glue Wednesday. I'm Sporty King. You know, the reason I came up with the term Glue Wednesday is because so often people use the cliche of Wednesday being hump day. Well, you know, I collect words. And as I collect words, I also try to look for the positive side of each word, because positivity is something we have to search for. So when I hear the term hump day, I feel that hump has the connotation of the need to get over. And the truth is, Wednesday is not so much a need to get over day. It's the middle of a 7-day work cycle, or I'm sorry, a seven-day cycle. And see, even I caught myself, because that's the truth is, it's not necessarily the middle of someone's work week. Someone might work Thursday to Tuesday. So Wednesday doesn't necessarily have to be hump day or the middle of the work week for anyone. But it is the middle of a traditional 7-day week. And I look at it as the day that keeps the beginning of the week and the weekend together. And that's why I call it the glue. So this is Glue Wednesday. Of course, I always look for a spiritual aspect in my speaking as well. And so my glue is G-L-U-E. God's love undoes everything. Not that God loves will tear things down, but that whatever you're going through, His love will pull it together. You know, I get a little choked up when I say it sometimes. But I'm just kidding. Sometimes what you have to do is remember to get choked up. Because one thing that we tend to do sometimes is misuse and misrepresent our emotions. There is nothing inherently wrong with any emotion that you express. No emotion is wrong. It's your reaction, it's your follow-up to what you do with the emotion that ends up making a difference. That's not even the topic today. But one thing, again, like I said, you should have I like to have a stream of consciousness going so that we can find ways to help people with different lessons as they come to us. Because that's when you'll be the most helpful, when you can find yourself in the moment. And that does walk us into our topic for this broadcast, which is silent joy. Silent joy. You see, because it's sometimes hard to accept our personal power. So we source it out to other people's opinions. You know, these days with our Facebook posts, or the Twitter posts or the Instagram, we shift the responsibility for our actions to popular opinion. So we'll do, you know, it's like on TV where they say poll the audience, dial a friend. You know, it's when you send out something that, how do you like this? I'm trying this new hairstyle, I'm doing this. And sure, that's nice, but a lot of people really rely on other people's opinion for their self-esteem and their self-worth. And that's what I'm saying we should not do. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't seek help there, but I'm reminding you that we have to recognize what we're doing and choose our messengers carefully. After you get the input, recognize that the final answer will always be up to you. And it has to be one that you can live with, hopefully with no regrets. And I always will tell you, don't live with regrets. Always look back at what happened and recognize, as you like to say, that this is what God had in store for you. So how could it be a regret? Everything that you made a mistake, everything that you messed up, number one, you didn't mess it up. God put you in position to get you a lesson. And we're going to find that on the broadcast as well. But let me take you back to when I was 8 or 9 years old, and a local church started an Air Force Cadets program. I went on the first afternoon to find out what it was about. And there were maybe 12 to 15 of us, and they put us in a cluster and began teaching us how to march. I remember that I was on the outside of the cluster. I was in the front and on the outside of the cluster. And as we were marching, they gave a command. And they had us turning left and right and about face. And then after a few rotations, I don't remember whether or not they said left or right, but I turned in one direction and everybody else in that line went the other way. Now, at first, I remember feeling pretty stupid and rushing to jump back in line with the cluster when the instructor stopped us and told everyone to stop and confirmed that I was the only one that had turned in the right direction, in the correct direction. And you'll see why I corrected that. I was the only one that had turned in the correct direction. So let's decide that the command was turn left and everyone else turn right. We've made a lot of left turns that others have called wrong in our lives. Or let's decide that the command was turn right and everyone else turn left. We've made more right turns than we give ourselves credit for because someone called them wrong. And that's why I look at left, and when people say that the opposite of right is wrong, I say the opposite of right is left. L-E-F-T. Let's encourage free thinking. So when someone says left, let's encourage them to go the way that they need to go, because the truth is we're not looking for we're looking for the needle in the haystack, right? We're looking for the exception to the rule, the diamond in the rough. That's what we want to look for when we're going forward. That's what this world is all about. All the progress in our world is not about the people who stayed in the cluster and all went one direction while one other person went the other direction. You could be that one other person depending on the situation. But you've got to make that choice and that decision. Again, that's the silent joy of celebrating who you are. Remember that wrong is somebody else's opinion of something that you did that didn't benefit them. Now, I'm sure there's certain parts of your life where you do have to have a clear delineation between what's right and wrong. But let's look at situations in school, for instance, where we snap and we smother children's creativity by telling them that they only have to get an answer right or wrong on a test. In fact, these days we are not teaching our children to learn. We're coaching them to pass a test. And once they pass that test, they don't have to remember a single thing that was on that test. They just have to get a passing grade so that the school district can continue to get funding. I mean, you have to really understand what's going on with this world. It depends on what they're studying. Of course, as you get higher into your career level, if you're starting to maybe go to be a doctor or a lawyer, those types of professions, you are going to have to remember some of those basic things. But for the most part, we're training our kids to pass a test instead of allowing them to learn. So I always support you parents. Hardest job in the world, but buckle down and make sure things start to work out for your kids. All right? But remember that wrong is somebody else's opinion of something that you did that didn't benefit them. They might not have been the best decisions we could have made at the time. However, they were right. They were the right decisions for you based on the information that you had to make the choice. The vision of who you see yourself to be creates the choices that you see before you. The vision of who you see yourself to be creates the choices you see before yourself. So that's why you can't worry about right or wrong. You have to look at right or left, because how you see yourself, once you turn in a direction, once you say, well, that's the way I need to go because that's where I want to get, because I see myself as worthy of being there. And if you turn in the other direction and you say, well, you know what, I'm good enough to be on that team too. That's a decision that you get to make based on how you feel about yourself. So go inside, even go back to your past and see how you've become who you've become. Because a lot of times the decisions that you made is when you felt you were either in that crowd or you weren't worthy of being in another one. And sometimes it's like we say we choose the lesser of two evils. Or is it the greater of two evils? The lesser of two evils, because we decide we want to go in a direction where we have at least a smaller chance of being hurt or exposed. Because the truth is, other people don't really hurt us. What they do is they give us the opportunity to hurt ourselves by feeling bad about something that we didn't live up to based on their expectations. If you just focus on living up to your expectations, the truth is, you'll never lose. I was having a conversation with our producers before the show, and we were talking about the World Championship of Public Speaking, which I'm getting ready to compete for, and it's a Toastmasters International contest. It's an annual contest called the World Championship of Public Speaking. Now, in 1996, I went to the finals in the World Championship, and I finished as one of the top 9 speakers in the world. So when people said to me, well, how'd you do at the contest, Sporty? Well, as it turns out, they only announced first, second, and third. And when they said each of those positions, they didn't mention my name in any of them. So when people said, well, how'd you do in the contest? I told them I tied for fourth with the other 5 that didn't take first, second, or third. Because one thing is for sure, I didn't lose. I never see myself as lose. So when I say you turn right or turn left, based on how you see yourself, you decide, can I continue to go in that direction? And so this year I've decided to go to readdress that contest and go in that direction and win the world championship. And so now I'll be called Sporty King, World Champion of Public Speaking 2018. It's always how you decide what words you want to speak into your spirit. And I got to tell you, because I'm not just puffed up and not being honest. Because my club members said, well, is that a little arrogant? I said, no. When you compete in a contest, you compete to win. You compete to win. Now, if I don't win the championship, then I'm ready to be humble and talk about the experience and the journey. But until then, the experience and the journey is about me winning. And that should be what your life is about. Aren't you in it to win it? See, we've got all these cliches that we use, and we say them, and we're not listening to what we say. We're giving our spirits permission to go forward, and then we're stopping it before it can get there. That's what I mean by the silent joy. If you know how to celebrate yourself, you won't get locked into someone else's opinion of your humility. Well, you're not being humble. You're just being arrogant. Well, you know what? Guess what? My Father is God. So I think I get a little room for the arrogance based on I got the #1 Father. So, and think about it. Isn't that how we did things when we were in school? When we're dealing with peer pressure, you looked at who had whose parents, you looked at who was hanging out with whom, and that's how you decided where you fit into the group. Well, I hang out with so-and-so, therefore I get to say such and such. That's what's going on. That's part of what's happening with this bullying that we're hearing so much about. It's always been going on. It's now more popular. In terms of, and I don't mean popular as, hey, let's do it. It's more popular in terms of it's in the news more. More people are coming forward now, and thank God for that. If someone is bullying you, if you start to see things changing what's going on in your children's life, again, parents, I always want to make a talk to you. See what's, ask them how things are going on in school. Ask them what's going on with their friends. You need to know that stuff. And this show, I'm going to do a different show on bullying, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But can't you see that everything is an important piece? One thing I will always tell you is that life is about going from one puzzle to the next. And I close my show with that every time. It's about going from one puzzle to the next. But no matter what size piece of the puzzle you see yourself as, without you, the puzzle is incomplete. And I don't have to just say that at the end of my broadcast, because I live it throughout my life. And I want you to live that throughout your life. Recognize that you are an important piece of the puzzle. And along the journey, what you have to remember is that you've met a lot of people who've told you what's best for you. And I'm not talking about the counselors and the coaches and the people who you've sought, but the people who've categorized or stereotyped you and put you in a box based on comparing you to someone else or someone else or their experience. See, based on that, a lot of times, have you heard someone say, well, if I were you, bulletin, it can't be you. So as soon as you hear somebody ready to give you some advice based on if I were you, normally it's not going to be good advice. And let me not make them a bad person, because a lot of times it is just a cliche that we speak. So it might not necessarily be bad advice on their part, but it says that they are just, they're still within themselves. If I were you. So that already lets you know that it's impossible for them to be in your shoes. So what they're about to do is give you something that maybe you can use that they either would not use or don't believe that they could use. Or maybe they are scared to use it. Now, if they say, once I did this, that's different. Can't you just hear the difference? Well, once in that situation, here's what I did. That's not the same as if I were you. So start to listen to what people say. And then, again, you don't have to feel, oh, man, they're giving me bogus advice. No. Sometimes they're just really trying to be encouraging and give you a word, but they really can't help you because you've got to make that decision on your own. You know, I once posted a picture of my great nephew. He was 10 years old at the time, playing basketball. I posted this on Facebook. And part of what someone asked me was how I would compare his skills to mine. And my response was, not only how, but why. That's a mistake parents get to make, which uncles get to avoid and become favorites. And that's why I'm supportive of parents. That was my reply. Not how does he compare, but why? Why would I bother comparing my 10-year-old great nephew, his skills, to how mine were at 10? It has nothing to do with it. It's a whole different game, first of all. But more importantly, I need to let him grow to be who he is, without him having to feel like he's got to be in my shadow or live up to who his uncle was. That's not what it's about. That's some of the pressure that we put on kids and friends and ourselves, and that sometimes, it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier, sometimes the bullying is self. Self-bullying is a lot stronger sometimes than the bullying we get from an outside source. Because if you don't have the right amount of self-esteem, you invite bullying. Because think about it, a lot of times if you go back to some of the bullies that you had in school, when that person stood up to that bully, didn't the bully back down? See, the bully needed the person to feel less than who they were so that they could have power. But the moment you stand up to the bully shrinks, because the bullying was really internal. So again, we're going to bring that up in another broadcast, because I'm loving the fact that you've got me thinking about that. See how important you are to the puzzle? Always recognize that somebody says, well, you just quick with the words. No, no, no. We have to recognize that every messenger has a delivery. And as the messenger, I'm responsible for the delivery. I don't always worry about the results. I want to make sure that I deliver the right message, and my goal is always to reach one person per delivery. A lot of times, like, you may get a chance to speak at a career day at your school, or at your child's school or something like that, and the military members, please go speak at the schools and wear your uniform, because our kids need to see you. But a lot of times when we go speak at those types of things, we say, oh, if I could just reach one person. You know, that's one of those cliches we use to try to keep ourselves up. And then we go and we try to reach everybody. In the process of trying to reach everyone, you will reach no one. Reach one person per speech. You even hear at the churches, when they say the doors of the church are open, what do they say? Is there one? Will you come? They don't say, okay, all of y'all who ain't saved, get up here. Think. Really start to, and in these days, we really do have to start thinking, because the internet has taken away the option for thinking. We are put in a mode where we are reacting to somebody else's misfortune. And that's why even, you ever heard that saying where people say they lie online about this wonderful life that they're having? Because that's what a lot of people are doing. They're either lying online about it or they're complaining about it to the point that nobody can help them. So don't worry about comparing yourself. It's pretty natural, especially for you younger parents. It's going to be natural for you to want to compare one child to another, because they don't come with a rule book. But as you mature in your parenthood, you realize and accept the individuality of each child. And you even learn to celebrate it. So likewise, don't worry, I didn't worry about comparing myself to my great nephew, and I didn't allow my friend to do the same. But before you learn to celebrate that individuality, you bury your children with that comparison and your great wisdom. So the poem I want to share with you today is one that I wrote when I was a teenager. It's called Don't You Realize That You Don't Know Me? And I wrote this poem, I dedicated this poem to that person that gets on our nerves at one time or another in their life. I wrote this poem, I dedicated it to my mother. And I dedicated it to my mother because, just as I'm saying to you parents, she went to PU, like a lot of you obviously have gone to Parent University, where one of the things they teach you to say is, I know you. I've raised you, and y'all going to finish this one with me. I know you. I brought you into this world, and I could take you out and make another one like you. And so that's the thing, is that, parents, so I fought my mother internally. I kept it to myself, telling her, no, you don't know me. I stood up inside and made sure that she recognized that I was an individual. And then, of course, outside I said, okay, Mom, what you need, right? But I wrote her this poem, and it's called Don't You Realize You Don't Know Me? But what I want to do is help you recognize that I updated the dedication over the years to some of those other people who claim to know us so well. Because think about who in your life have you had that little thing in the back of your neck and they know you. Your teachers, your friends, your coaches, your relatives, aunts and uncles, cousins. A lot of people have said that they know you, and you fought it on the inside. So you hear some of those people as I recite this poem to you, but guess what? You also hear yourself, because you've done it to somebody as well. It's one of those unconscious things that we say in our vocabulary, but I want you to listen to it and take it literally and see how it works in your life. So hear all the people, that I dedicated to, but see if you find yourself in this poem as well. Don't you realize that you don't know me? How many times have I heard, I knew you'd do that. It figures you'd say that. Please don't tell me that you know me, because you only insult my intelligence. Don't you realize you don't know me? Have I so shallow a mind that you can pick me apart at will? Are my actions really predictable? While looking through your drinking glass crystal ball, is my voice really always monotone? Don't you realize you don't know me? Don't you realize that you only know what I let you know? And don't you realize that I could never let you know me, even if I wanted to? Because I don't really know myself. Don't you realize you don't know me? Don't you know that what you knew I do, I didn't know I do, even after I did what I did like you knew I'd do it? And don't you know that what you figured I'd say, I didn't figure I'd say, even after I said what I said like you figured I'd say it? Don't you realize you don't know me? Don't you realize that you don't know me? And in slow motion, don't you know? No. But in slow motion, don't you know that what you knew I do, I didn't know I do? Even after I did what I did, like you knew I'd do it. Have you had anybody say that to you? Your mother, why didn't you move that glass? You're a jinx. You knew you were going to knock it over. I said, well, Ma, I didn't know I was going to knock it over since you knew. Why didn't you move the glass? Right? And don't you know that what you figured I'd say, I didn't figure I'd say. Even after I said what I said, like you figured I'd say it. And I had that when my mother, Sporty, go clean up your room. I ain't cleaned up nothing. Just kidding, Mom. See, haven't we said something that we couldn't pull the words back in time? Like in the cartoons, you could pull those words back. But in real life, you can't. So we've all said something that we wish we could pull back. And that's why it's important to recognize that it's not about all of these people who know you or who think they do, because they can't. It's how well you know yourself. Because there's going to be something that you say or do that you didn't expect yourself to do. Bravery is usually in retrospect, where we do something and then we look back and see how brave we were and how we overcame a situation that we didn't think we could. So really get focused on knowing yourself, because that becomes the key. Don't worry about the question of whether or not you really know yourself, because the more important answer is don't worry about whether or not some people know you. It's most important that you know yourself. Do you know your best smile? Do you know your best pose for your selfies? Do you know how you look when you go to the interview? What interview? Oh, because even if you're not interviewing for a job, every day you walk out into the public, you're interviewing. Because you're interviewing for how you get service at a restaurant. You're interviewing for the next relationship you're going to be in. You're interviewing for how people will perceive you when you walk into the building or walk in to talk to a teacher. You're always being interviewed. But you know what? You'll always be perceived as a messenger. And you need to be sure that you're a child of God. So one of the things that I thought about in preparation for this week's Glue is to give you an assignment. And I want you to post, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, or if you are listening to this on a podcast, a Podbeam, or something where you're not posting, I want you to email me at sk@sportyking.com. sk@sportyking.com. And what I want you to do is tell me, what do you celebrate about yourself? What do you celebrate about yourself? What's your silent joy? I'm going to tell you one of mine. First of all, it is joy, J-O-Y, J-O-Y, just one you. See, I celebrate the fact that there is no other Sporty King, better known as Sporty. And see, you want to stretch the definition out sometimes. My birth name is Sporty King, but my nickname is Sporty. So I don't want to just say there's no other Sporty, because there is another Sporty in this world. And guess what? I found out there's also another Sporty. But there's no other Sporty King better known as Sporty. And that's what I do to celebrate my joy. And because there's one of those cliches that there's nobody else like you, and it's true. So I make sure that there's nobody else like me. And when people say, well, you know, only you would do that, Sporty, I'm saying, well, then that's why I had to do it. Because if I didn't do it, then it wouldn't get done. You know, there's always got to be ways that you find that out. So, again, if you're on Facebook or YouTube or anything where you can type in it, please type in what you celebrate about yourself. Otherwise, send me an email to sk@sportyking.com about what you celebrate about yourself. And on next week's broadcast, I want to get some of those things that people share. I want to share them with the rest of the audience. I won't necessarily say your name, and you can let me know if you don't want your name said. That's fine too. But I want us to see just how much we have in common. We spend so much time looking for the differences and not enough time looking for the similarities. And let me tell you something. I've got viewership around the world. So I know my friends in Africa, I'm expecting you to make sure you put something on. My friends in Switzerland, Australia, as well as every state in the United States. If everybody could give me something that they celebrate about themselves, I can show us how we can pull it all together, because that's what it's all about, okay? But I'm also big on celebrating my faith. People pretend to talk about faith being important to success, yet really they're equating success to money. And when I tell people that I've been in business 24 years, a lot of times they go, oh, man, 24 years, oh, he must have been making all this money. See, what they don't think about is how many meals I've skipped, how many times crackers and soup have been my dinner. So they don't understand that it's not about financial success, it's about spiritual success. And what I'll do with you next week when we go over all the things that you celebrate, I'm going to give you some other samples of people who have been successful, but not financially, but you'll see their success if I just drop their name on you right now. Moses was successful. He didn't think he would be. In fact, in Exodus 3:11, he said, but who am I to appear before Pharaoh? That's what he said to God. Gideon, if you remember him, he was in Judges 6:15. He said, but Lord, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my entire family. So I'm going to give you a list of people who were in the Bible who didn't think that they were going to be, that they were worthy enough to be celebrated. And I'm going to talk to you about their silent joy. And I'm going to compare it to yours. And in the comparison, like I said, not the comparison where I'm, like I talked about earlier with my my grandnephew, but just the comparison of showing similarities to inspire you to lift yourself up. Because the truth is, we don't motivate one another, we inspire one another. And that'll be part of my message next week as I talk to you about silent joy. What can you do to celebrate your silent joy? Well, number one, you can recognize that life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of the puzzle in all of your family, social, or business interactions. Yet, no matter what size puzzle piece you see yourself as, without you, the puzzle is seen and labeled as incomplete. Don't you allow your puzzle to be incomplete. Don't you allow yourself to let your silent joy get snuffed out. Make sure you use it and bring it out, because all of us will benefit from it. I'm Sporty King. I'll see you next week.